This episode is brought to you by Farmers Insurance. When was the last time you reviewed your insurance policy? So it's been a while, huh? Well, no worries. My friends at the Austin Brummett Agency would love to hear from you and provide you with some amazing rates. Give them a call at 678-402-8262 or email them at abrummett@farmersagent.com. That's ABRUMIT at farmersagent.com, and tell them Harley sent you. Insiders, Inside the Bubble with Harley G is now sponsored by BetterHelp. As a partner of this episode, listeners can access the BetterHelp link located in the show notes to receive 10% off your first month of therapy with BetterHelp and get matched with a therapist who will listen and help. Go to BetterHelp, that is BetterHelp.com/inside the bubble, the link to get started. You're listening to Inside the Bubble with Harley G, the podcast for the superwoman. Every week, we connect with amazing individuals who share their inspirational experiences and stories while motivating and inspiring purpose. It's time to hang your cape. Grab your coffee, your water, your cocktail, and come on in Inside the Bubble with me, your host, Harley G. Insiders, it is me, Harley G, with Inside the Bubble with Harley G. And today, I am going to talk about something that is so important, so vital to our well-being, especially for that mother on the go and that high-achieving career woman who's always taking care of everybody around them, who's always making sure that everyone is cared for around them, who's always putting herself on the back burner to make sure that the people around her are taken care of. And what I am going to talk about today, what I am referring to, is self-care. We hear so much conversation about self-care. We hear so much about how important it is and how we need to allow ourselves and make time for it. But I still feel like somewhere, somehow, we fall short of that. And at the beginning of the year, I actually had planned a trip for myself to go to San Francisco. You may have seen some pictures and some videos on my San Francisco trip. When I started planning the trip to San Francisco, it was originally intended to be a trip that I just got away and I just took some time off to really kind of get away. It was just supposed to be a getaway trip. As I started planning and I got closer and closer to the trip, things started shifting for me. One thing is, as you all may know, I also have a 9-to-5, and I'm also making sure that I'm allowing myself and walking in my journey, which is all about the podcast. And I also have children, and I have a spouse, and I have a household, and all of that, which is typical for a lot of women, is you're trying and you're juggling all of that. And as I got closer to my trip and I started really thinking about it, I became more and more intentional about the fact that I am going to have to pause during this trip. I'm going to have to take some time to unwind, to decompress, to be still. And the closer I got to it, I was like, it became a non-negotiable for me. I was like, okay, I'm getting ready to go on this trip. I need to make sure that I have time to do that. And then I intentionally did not plan anything during this trip because I wanted to make sure that allowed myself to free flow during this trip. So I planned a trip to San Francisco, and as of course as it began to get closer and closer, I got super excited. I went to San Francisco, and I had the ability to wake up at every time I wanted to wake up. I had the ability to go and work out whatever time I wanted to work out. I had the ability to be still and receive so many downloads. I mean, they were coming, I felt like they were coming like just and throughout the day, multiple times a day. I was able to wake up and really meditate and pause and pray and just really align myself on all the levels. And what I mean by that is that mentally, spiritually, physically, I was able to feel like all of it was just centered. And I had not felt like that in probably over a year. And as I went through the trip and I was able to have those moments, I was able to have those downloads, I was able to really pause, and I was able to rest of course, on all those levels: rest mentally, rest spiritually, rest physically, rest emotionally. My tank became full. And the thing about it is, me being an introvert, you may or may not know that, but me being an introvert, I'm always outpouring. I'm always pouring into people. I'm always giving. And one thing that I did not realize, even though I feed off of the energy of people, of other people, but it is really important and vital that I have the opportunity to pour back into myself. And I had, for the first time while I was on my trip to San Francisco, actually had the opportunity to pour back into myself to where I felt like my cup was actually full, which was just so, that was amazing, right? And I came back and I was just like, this is awesome. I came back, I was refreshed. It was really a life-changing trip for me that I actually, by the way, have never had the opportunity to get away by myself. I never, ever since I've started a family, I've never had the opportunity to really go out by myself and just have that time. It's either with family or there's a purpose or with work. And to have the ability to do that, I came back and told my husband that I am now going to plan so that I can have this opportunity to do this on an annual basis. So once a year, I will make it a point to go by myself on a self-care trip and have the ability to reload mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally. And and so I came back and I was pumped, I was rejuvenated, and I was just like, I was ready to take on the world. And you want to hold on to that feeling. You want to keep that feeling, right? Because you're like, yes, I can conquer the world. I can do it all. And as I started getting back into my routine, because there's no work around it. I have to go to work. I have to take my kids to their extracurricular activities. I have to take care of the household. And as I started getting back into my regular routine, that feeling that I've had on my self-care trip became to slowly diminish, right? And even though I was trying to, or I was putting in things in place to still have that self-care time, but it wasn't the same. And so in the spirit of complete transparency, after a while, after a week or two, coming back from my San Francisco trip, I felt like I was right back to not as bad, but I was in a way I was back to how I was feeling before I went on my trip. Because for me, there's no way around it. So I'm going to have to be intentional about the time and the self-care time that I pour into myself. And I realized that 30 minutes is not enough. That's the thing. I need more time now that I've taken on so much. I need more time to make sure that I'm pouring back into myself. So the little sneak peeks here and there for 30 minutes are not able to really fully rejuvenate me. And crazy enough is, as I was doing some research for this episode, I was looking at some information about self-care. I came across this beautiful definition of self-care, and I want to read it to you. It says, so self-care, to become aware of and identify what you are feeling, and then allow yourself to lean into that feeling in a way that honors yourself and your emotions. We can try to ignore and deny and suppress our emotions, but eventually they come out one way or another. So I want to repeat the definition again, because I want us to talk about this. It is to become aware of and identify what you are feeling, and then allow yourself to lean into that feeling in a way that honors yourself and your emotions. Wow. I mean, first, we have to have that awareness. We have to have the awareness to understand and realize what we are going through, what state you're in right now, what emotions are you sitting in right now. So first, you have to have that awareness. Second, identify what you're feeling. There is absolutely nothing wrong with you feeling burnt out, or you feeling frustrated, or you feeling like overwhelmed, with you feeling stressed. That's one thing with self-care, is that you must allow yourself to acknowledge what you are feeling and what you are going through. So first, having that awareness, okay, I'm feeling some type of way right now. Two, acknowledging that it's okay. It is okay for you to go through whatever emotions that you are going through. An exercise that I went through most recently was, I was given a bingo card, and the bingo card had what we would call words that have catabolic energy. And what I mean by catabolic energy is words that one may deem negative. They were words like ashamed. There were words like overwhelmed, stress, apathy, resentful. And it was a bingo card with those names on it. And whenever you went through that emotion, you had to mark the box. Okay? So if you were going through if you were feeling resentful, then you would mark the box. And what happened was, through going through that exercise, is that you actually acknowledge the fact that you were having that emotion, and by being aware of it, acknowledging that emotion, you were actually able to turn it into positive energy, because you're like, it's okay for me to feel overwhelmed right now. Okay. And there's just a feeling about that acknowledgement that allows you to change it into positive energy. So I just thought that was a great exercise. But when we talk about this definition of self-care, it does say that you need to allow yourself, identify what you're going through, and you do need to allow yourself to lean on that feeling in a way that honors yourself. So you're aware of how you're feeling, what you're going through, you acknowledge it, and then you lean on that to honor yourself. Oh my goodness. So could you imagine, you're going through your work week and you get to a point where you are aware. You're like, I'm aware. I'm not feeling, really I'm feeling some negative energy right now. You acknowledge the fact that you're going through that. Like, you acknowledge the fact that you're feeling overwhelmed. And then you honor yourself because you're going through that. So that means now you're able to take that feeling of overwhelm
Ladies, I know there's so much to do and not enough time in the day. Trust me, I'm right there with you. But what are you doing for yourself? Well, I've recently discovered Body Bar Pilates. Let me tell you a little bit about it. Body Bar Pilates will challenge all of your major muscle groups and provide you with a full body workout. Wow. Listen, I had to check it out. I took a class with Sherelle and it was amazing. They have workouts for all skill levels, whether you're just starting out or you're just looking for a new way to move your body. This is the community for you. Check out my friends at Body Bar Pilates East Cobb or give them a call at 678-941-4371. And don't forget to mention me, Harley G.
Or being overwhelmed, and you're able to honor yourself by doing your self-care, by pausing and doing a 30-minute meditation, or pausing and saying, you know what, I'm gonna go get my nails done, or I'm gonna go get a massage, or I need to get on the phone and plan a girls' night with my girls. Like, you're able to actually take that negative energy and you're able to honor yourself and administer your self care at the same time. I just thought this was mind blowing. Okay, so self care is acknowledging who you are and what you need to be your authentic self. And I want to say that it's not one size fits all. So that means that while right now your self care to you might be getting a mani and pedi, but it doesn't mean that it always has to be that way. It could be that it's a mani and pedi, and then you want to go get a massage, and then you may get to a point where you're like, I don't want massages anymore, I want to go to dinner with my girlfriends. Self-care is whatever you need to pour back into yourself. That's what self-care is. So really acknowledging who you are and what you need to be your authentic self. It could be a girls' night, it could be 30 minutes hiding from your family, or getting in the car and going to that trail and having a 45-minute walk on the trail. So it is what you need to be your authentic self. Now, I know this all sounds great, right? And you're like, okay, so Harley, it's great. You are talking about self-care, but I don't have time for that. And we can't say that all of this, we can't say all of this without acknowledging that sometimes, most oftentimes, I've had so many conversations with women that feel like if I do self care, that means that I'm taken away from my family. Or if I do self care, that means that now I don't have 30 minutes to do this thing for someone else. Or you start feeling guilty, or you start feeling pressured because now it's like, okay, well, I only had an hour and I have to do this, this, and that. And if you're telling me to do my self care, so that only leaves 30 minutes for me to do something that I feel like I had to do. But let me ask you something. So if you only had an hour and you have to do three things. You have to pick up your child from school. You have to go ahead and fix dinner, and then you have to fire off a couple of emails. And you're like, Harley, I only have an hour to do all three of those things, which is not even enough. And now you're telling me that I have to do self care. But let me ask you something. What's gonna happen in the process of you trying to accomplish these three things? So you're gonna try to do all three of those things. You might get frustrated because now you went to pick up your child. Your child was supposed to be ready at 5 o'clock. Now it's 5:15, right? And so now it's 5:15. You're getting stressed. You're upset because they're getting out late. You are missing on. You're telling yourself, like, now you're overwhelmed because you're like, I still have to fix dinner. I still have to fire off these emails. So now you start feeling frustrated, upset, angry, overwhelmed. and then you get home and now you have to rush through doing dinner, right? You have to get dinner ready, and then you have to fire off this email, and there's no telling what tone you or what frame of mind you're in when you're sending that off email, and you might send this email with like 5 exclamation mark in it. I don't know, I'm just making up something. But if you had taken 30 minutes from that time and you had poured back into yourself, what frame of mind would you be in to cook dinner, to write that email? Like, just think about that. Think about the impact that it has when you don't pour back into yourself and you're continually going. It's like the little hamster wheel. You're continually going. You're on that treadmill and you're not pausing. And then what happens and how does that impact the people around you? Now you become frustrated all the time, and people start noticing your behavior or your tone when you talk to them, or you're tired or you're burned out. And so it's really important that even though we have 10 million things to do, and I know this because I am a mother myself, I get it because we are mothers on the go and we're trying to make everything happen. But the impact to your emotional and your spiritual and your physical, it's all coming from that stress, being overwhelmed, splitting yourself in 5 different directions when you could pause, pour back into yourself, have a full tank, and now you're actually able to do more with that. You're actually able to be more productive, more focused. You're actually able to think more creatively. Okay, how can I make this happen? Who can I lean on? Who can I solicit help from? So you're actually better for doing that self-care. And the guilty thing, I get it. I get it. I get it. Because it's like, oh, well, if I do this self-care for me, that I'm taking away from somebody else. But no, you're actually telling yourself that you love yourself. You're showing, if you have children, you're showing your children how important it is to pour back in yourself, to prioritize yourself. And that's actually better. That you're setting an example for them. You're being a role model for them. As women, we have so much that is put upon us. We're shouldering so much. There's so much pressure on us as women, as mothers on the go, as high achieving career women. We can feel the pressure, and it begins to weigh on us after a while. And if we don't take care of ourselves, then it becomes to our detriment. We actually end up having you can end up having high blood pressure. It does start to manifest itself. And that's one thing that I want to say, is that while you may not be able to see on the outside the lack of self-care, how it's impacting you may not be able to see on the outside, but it is definitely impacting your physical well-being. So let's say you don't have time to go work out, you don't have time to focus on your physical aspect because you're always running around. It's actually impacting that. It's definitely impacting your emotional well-being. It's impacting your spiritual well-being, because how are you supposed to pause and align spiritually if you don't have time? And it's definitely impacting your emotional state. Just take a look at the people around you and how they are responding to you, and see, is that really what does that mean? How does it mean? How am I engaging with those people, right? How are they seeing me right now? So today, and so what I'm saying is that self-care is it's essential. It is essential to your well-being. It is essential to help us strive and keep us moving forward. I also want to recognize that when it comes to self-care, you actually need to build a safe place and a self-care community around you, so that it becomes built into everything that you do, so that it becomes a sacred space for you, and that people around you will begin to value it as you prioritize yourself. So the one thing that I want to talk about is that if you don't build that sacred space around your self-care, if you don't solicit your community around you to help you with that self-care, then how do you expect other people to take it seriously? Okay, so that means that if self-care is just this thing that I do whenever I have a chance, or whenever I have like a pocket of time, I do it, then that's how people around you are going to treat you when it comes to self-care. But if you build a bubble, you see how I did that? If you build a bubble around self-care and it becomes this sacred, safe space for you, people will respect that. And what I mean by that is that, for instance, if you, a couple of years ago, I was doing goals with my kids. I may have told this story before, but it was at the beginning of the year. It was in January, and my kids and I were talking about what are our goals going to be for that year. And for me, I wanted self care to become this thing that was just naturally built into my routine, into my everyday life. And what I did was I wrote it down. And when my kids and I started talking about what our goals were going to be for that year, I said that I wanted my self-care time to be between 7 to 8 p.m. every single day. So every single day between 7 to 8 p.m., I would find my spot, which is here in this office, and I would come in here for an hour between the hours of 7 to 8, and my kids were not allowed to call on me. They were not allowed to come in here. They were not allowed to disturb me. That became my sacred time around self-care to do what I needed to do. And they were not allowed to disturb that time. And because I communicated that to them, because I told them that that is my sacred self-care time, they knew, and they actually started to hold me accountable for that time. So what started happening is that if by happenstance I was running behind on coming into my self-care space, so I mentioned to them that it was from 7 to 8. If it was 7:15 and I was not in my self-care space, one of them would say, "Wait a minute, it's 7:15. What are you doing? You're supposed to be doing your self-care." And they became part of that self-care community for me to hold me accountable. It was so beautiful to see them. And they knew, they were like, okay, it's 7 o'clock. Mom is out of pocket until 8 o'clock. Who can you put around you? What accountability can you put around you so that when it comes to your self-care, you're able to have that sacred time, it's respected, and it's consistent? Okay? Is it that you need to call a couple of girlfriends and say, hey, between 7 to 8, I'm going to be doing my self-care. I need you guys to check in on me, every other day to make sure that I'm doing it. Okay? Do you need to put an alarm on your phone to make sure that at 6:50, the alarm is 6:55, to make sure that 7 o'clock you are doing that self-care? Do you need to make an invite to yourself on your calendar and calendar it into your calendar and respect it just like any other meeting that you have, okay, to have that self-care time? What is it going to take for you to make sure that you are having that self-care time on a consistent basis? And maybe it is that you start out by doing it 3 times a week, okay? Because we don't want to get stressed trying to figure out how are we going to do self-care. That's counterproductive. But can you respectfully start with a frequency that will help you get into that routine of doing your self-care every day? Okay. Is it that, like I said, 3 days a week, I'm going to do my self care Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday within this hour time frame or whatever is conducive for you? You are saying, okay, I can dedicate, I can commit to doing it 3 times a week. And what will happen is that you will start doing it 3 times a week, and then you'll be able to say, okay, now I've gotten to the point where I'm consistent and I'm doing this self-care 3 times a week. Let me kick it up a notch and do it 4 times a week. Because let me tell you something, once you start, it does become addictive. You'll see how it's starting to impact you again, physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and you'll want more. Okay. And now you will have the ability to say, okay, now I'm doing it 4 times a week, now I'm doing it 6 times a week, now it's every day. And you can adjust the time frame, whether it's an hour, whether it's 45 minutes, whether it's a couple of hours. I personally, I love to get up early in the morning and come in here and pause and do my self-care for 30 minutes because I feel like this is when the world is still. This is where everything is at peace. And there's just this sense of peace that happens when I'm doing that self-care that early in the morning that I have literally become addicted to. It's almost kind of like I get there and I just like crave that peace. And now it's just become part of my routine. Monday through Friday, I get up and I am doing my self-care for 30 minutes at 5 o'clock before I go to the gym. And so what are some ways, what are some things that you can implement around you to make sure that you are going to be consistent with it? So whether it's a friend, whether it's an accountability partner, whether it's putting on your calendar. And like I said, you don't have to start saying, being gung-ho and saying, yes, I'm going to do it 5 times a week. And that's going to be, is that really reasonable? Think about what's going on in your life. Think about your responsibilities. Think about you because you know you, okay? Is 5 times a week really the frequency that you need to be starting off with? I don't know. You're the only one that can answer that question. But maybe it is twice a week that you do it. And you start off trying it 2 times a week. And then as you get committed to it, then you start increasing that frequency. Okay. So you need to start somewhere, right? Even if it's once a week, but start somewhere and put some accountability measures around you to allow you to be consistent with it. And of course, I need to also talk about how self-care is not a one size fits all. Okay, so that means that you know yourself better. You know what rejuvenates you. You know what gets you excited, what gets you full, what gets you going. Because I know that this can be overwhelming and daunting. Yes, yes, yes. They talk about self-care. They say I have to do self-care, but I don't even know where to start. What do I need to do? It's so much. Okay, I get it. I understand. But there's no right or wrong way. Okay, this is not one size fits all. Again, there's no right or wrong way. So like I mentioned earlier, whether it is that, hey, I can commit to going an hour once a week or once every other week and doing that mani-pedi. So 1 hour once every other week, I can commit to sitting in that chair, turning on the massage button, and letting them pamper me with a mani and pedi. Perfect. Or maybe you're not a mani and pedi person. You're like, you know what, Harli? I'm into massages. That's what I want to do. Perfect. So once a month, I know someone who does this. Once a month, you have it scheduled to have your massage. You have your massage once a month and you have it on the books and you can commit to it. Okay? Or it could be that, you know what? Every other Friday or the third Friday of the month, I have that girl time with my girlfriends. I know that I can go out with them, we can have girls' night out, or it is that you have a really great girlfriend that will have you that you can have coffee with every other Friday, right? So every other Friday you can catch up with your girlfriend, you guys can shoot the breeze, talk about whatever you want to talk about, but you have that time. And the thing is, you can change it based on your season of life, based on what you're into, based on what you have to do. You can change it. Okay? So, again, it's not one size fits all. You can change it as you can. You can figure out what is it that you need at that time, at this point, and then you can cater it. You can cater and customize self-care for you and who you are. Because remember what I said, it is to be aware of and identify what you are feeling, and now allowing yourself to lean into that feeling in a way that honors yourself. Your self-care needs to honor who you and who you are. Okay? There's no right or wrong way to do it. Also, think about the space that you feel. Think about what's a space that you feel that you what's a space that you can go into consistently and you feel emotionally safe, and you feel like this space is truly where you could be at peace. For some, it could be that, I really love being around the water, or I really love being around nature. Or me, I just want to be in a corner by myself, in a room by myself where it's nice and quiet. Whatever that space is for you, and you know what that space is for you, because when you get into that space, when you are in that space, you really truly have peace. You know what peace is like when you are in that space. Again, it could be outside in nature. For you, it might be a trail that when you are out walking in nature, when you're out walking in that trail, you feel like you are absolutely at peace. You feel connected. You feel centered. Maybe it's water. I know a few individuals who love being around water, because for them, watching the water, the flow, the movement of it, for them, it's almost it's just a spiritual. It's a spiritual feeling that they get when they're around the water. It centers them. It allows them to think clearly. It allows them to think innovatively, creatively. Or it could be a room that you go into, and when you are in that room, you're at peace. You're able to be in your own environment and really feel centered. So, what is that space for you, right? So, think about that, sitting that, and think about, what does that space look like for me? And then as you begin to hone in on that, that is where your self-care may need to begin. Maybe it is going out and being around, it's a certain place that you go to consistently, and you're able to feel that you're able to feel centered, you're able to feel at one. I don't know what that space is for you, but really think about that, because that's actually a space where your self-care could actually begin. Okay? So, what is that feeling like when you're in that space, right? How do you feel when you're in that space, when you're out on that trail, out with nature, you are in that room, you're in that space? What is the feeling that you get? Is it peace? Is it you feel content? Is it quiet stillness? Is it, hey, I'm going to go into my yoga room and I'm going to center, meditate, pray, hold still, breathe? That's also could be a method of self-care. What is that space? Now, we can't talk about self-care without talking about blockers. And some of that could be that what I mean by blockers is, what are some self-care blockers that are preventing you from taking that time for yourself? Okay. Earlier we mentioned that, oh my gosh, time. Okay, but have you ever heard of the saying, you make time for the things that you really care about or that you really truly value? So I don't want to hear that it's time, because you make room for what you want to make room in your life. Okay. Um, is it that you feel shameful? You feel guilty because you feel like, if I do that self care, it's going to take away from something else? Is it the expectations that are put around us to be, as we are mothers on the go, as we are high achieving career women? Is it that society has told us that the more we do, the more productive we are, the more the more we can achieve by doing all the time? Is it those expectations are actually a blocker for you? Is it that you're hearing from others because you're hearing of all the things that they're taking on, all the things that they're doing, and so you feel like, oh my goodness, I need to be doing just as much, or I need to be doing more? Yes, so that could also be a blocker. Or is it the requirements of being a superwoman? I'm going to pause right there. Because as mothers on the go, as high achieving career women, we begin or have that superwoman syndrome. And I'm going to be completely transparent with you. When I started having kids and I was raising my kids when they were like really young, still raising my kids, but when they were really young, I would hear all the time, oh my goodness, Harley, how are you doing it? How is it that you are able to have a full-time job? You're able to raise 4 kids. You're able to keep up with your household. You're able to provide for them. You're able to care for the people around you. You're able to volunteer, and you're able to work out, and you're able to do all these things. Oh my gosh, you're a superwoman. And I started taking that on, that medal of superwomanness. I started taking it on like it was a great thing, like it was a positive thing. Like it was like, yes, if I'm that superwoman, then I am being productive. I am achieving my goals. I am being, great by being that superwoman. And what happens is that now you begin to work off of the expectations of being a superwoman, and now it begins to impact your self-care, your mental well-being, your emotional state. You become wanting to be everything for everybody else. You put yourself on the back burner. You don't prioritize yourself anymore. You get into burnout mode. You begin to carry too much. It manifests itself physically on you because now you don't have time to. It just trickles, as you can see, it just trickles down and impacts you. Okay? So it's really important that you hone in on those blockers. Identify those blockers. What is it that you're telling yourself? What kind of conversation are you having with yourself that's telling you that I don't have time for self-care? Okay? So are you telling yourself, hey, if I do this, then I'm not going to have time to do this? Well, how important is it really for you to do that other thing if you're not in a good mental well-being space? If you are angry all the time, if you feel burned out all the time, if you're tired all the time, is that what you want? Is that what you really want? So think about that. Another blocker is not playing for it. Oh yeah, I'll have that many petty in, when I get to around to it. When are you going to get around to it? Because there's always going to be something that's going to come up that is going to pull away from your time. Always. I promise you this, as I am a superwoman myself, there's always going to be something that's going to be pulling at you, that's going to want your attention, that's going to want to put itself be for you, and what are you going to do to counteract that? And that is plan for it. Have it on your calendar. If you need to, have yourself a self-care calendar. Get you a little calendar and know that, you know what, this is my self-care calendar, and this is where I'm going to prioritize and make sure that I administer my self-care to consistently. You plan everything else. You have calendars for everything. You put everything else on the calendar. So why are you not putting your self-care on the calendar? Why are you not planning for it? Just like you plan for taking the kids to practice, or you plan for that trip that you want to have annually. Well, why are you not planning your self-care? I think that, and I mentioned this earlier with the accountability part, but getting you a support system that becomes your self-care community is so important. I know for me, I have a girlfriend, I have a specific girlfriend, you know who you are, Parole, that I plan my mini and petties with. And we're around the 2 week mark, we call each other up and we're like, okay, it's time. And we hold each other accountable for getting those manis and those petties on a consistent basis. I also have girlfriends that they're my coffee girlfriends. Okay. And that's great. Have yourself, lined up all your girlfriend groups or whatever. And what is it that is, that you two can, that you go for those girlfriend groups, what is it that you all connect on? So it could be that, hey, I have my mini petty girlfriend, and then I have my coffee girlfriend, and then I have like my girls night out, I have my sisters, I have this group, and there's nothing wrong with that. And so now you know that you're able to tap into those different communities to do your self-care. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that a great idea? Like, tap into your girlfriend communities to help you with your self-care. Rely on their strength and the connections that you have to have those self-care. Okay? To have that self-care. Is it that, and it's so amazing because, and we all know, especially as mothers, we can't go anywhere and not talk about our kids as much as we try to. But it just because, so for example, last week I had an opportunity to have a girls' night out with two other moms, and we were able to let our hair down. My hair is already down, but we were able to let our hair down and talk about all the things that's happening when, like what I like to say, when life be lifing and you're a mom, right? So that means we talked about the carpool line, and we talked about the homework and the school projects. We talked about all of that, but we also wanted to make sure and acknowledge the fact that we're not just mothers. We're also women that we need to have that time, and we need to be allowed and give ourselves permission to pour back into ourselves. And what does that look like when you're a mother? What does that look like when you're always on the go? What does that look like when you're a high achieving career woman and you're into your career, which is amazing and wonderful and beautiful, but you cannot allow yourself to be on a back burn. And we went out and we had the opportunity to talk about all of that. We talk about the kids, to talk about girls' night out, to talk about hanging out with each other, talk about all of that. And it was so, it was so nice. It was just like, you felt like when we walked away, we just felt like we had the opportunity to release, put it all out there, and then our cup were refilled. We had refilled cups by the time we were walking away. So having the opportunity to get around girlfriends and vent and release and slow down and laugh is just, it's a form of self-care. Being around those girlfriends and being able to really be your true authentic self with them, that is a form of self-care. So Self-care needs to be a safe place. It needs to be, you need to have a community that will help you with self-care. And I do believe that self-care is a journey. Okay, most importantly, I do believe that it's a journey because you are going to continue to evolve on that journey. Like I said, mentioned before, it's not one size fits all. So it may be that you are in a phase of life or in your journey, and this is what you need right now for self care. A month from now, 6 months from now, a year from now, 5 years from now, you may need something else. You may need to, as you continue to evolve, you may need to do self care differently. Maybe it's, down the line when you have more time and maybe your kids are at the house. Now your self care for you is really sitting down with a book because you have time. You don't have to take the kids everywhere, and you don't have to sit in the carpool and do this and do that. Now you actually have time to sit down and read a few chapters of a book every single night. Okay? So as you continue to evolve in your self-care journey, as you continue to evolve, your self-care journey is going to evolve as well. Okay? And another thing is self-care allows you to have deeper connection to your well-being. And what I mean by that is you'll have deeper connection emotionally, physically, mentally, and spiritually on all levels. When you're able to really slow down and pay attention to who you really are and lean into yourself and be aware of what you need at that time, right? We're thinking about the definition. You're able to center and really align your physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual well being. How beautiful is that? And like I mentioned earlier at the beginning of the pod, I really felt that way when I had time to slow down when I went to my trip in San Francisco. I felt like all of those levels, all of the different aspects of me, of my well being, were actually aligning at the same time. During your self care journey, you'll experience so many things and allow yourself to experience those things. You're going to experience passion, self love, discovery. There's no telling as you are having that walk on the trail what creative idea, what innovative idea you may be able to come up with. You'll also be challenged, okay? Especially if you're a mom on the go and you're dealing with multiple kids or even one child. There are going to be challenges. There are going to be things. I'm not, I don't want you guys to think that I'm naive or that I don't know. But I know things are going to pull at you. And so self-care is a challenge, but you have to commit to it and you have to be consistent and put that community around you that will hold you accountable. Okay. And even self-care would even sometimes be scary. I'm not going to lie to you because it's like, oh my gosh, what am I doing here? Am I really doing this? This is, I'm really taking that 30-minute and I'm doing the self-care, but I really feel it's going to be scary sometimes, but it's okay. Because what I guarantee you will happen is that you will evolve. You will evolve on this journey of self-care. Think about those life-altering events that happen that you just can't get away from, right? Like loss, and think about career and children. How do you cope through those things? If you don't have self-care, if you don't have those, if you have not implemented those different aspects of self-care in your life intentionally, how are you able to go through those life-changing events or those events that impact you, those altering events? How are you supposed to get through them if you have not put tools and resources and measures and if you have not put those things in place? How are you supposed to get through them? And so it's self-care allows you, gives you the ability to work through those life-altering events. And for me, leaning on my self-care, it's it's like a piece. It's almost kind of like leaning on my community to help me. as well. And I have a girlfriend who knows, of course, she knows 7 to 8 o'clock, I'm doing my self care. And if we're on the phone and it's a little bit past 7, she'll say, "Oh, okay, gotta go. Call me after 8 o'clock." She respects that and she holds me accountable. And she is part of that self care community that I need, right? And so by doing that, she is also respecting the fact that I'm doing something for myself, I'm pouring back into myself, and then I'm able to get back on the floor at 8 o'clock and I'm rejuvenated, I've slowed down, I've been authentic to myself, and now I'm able to pour back into her, or I'm able to pour back into my husband, or my kids, or my community, my environment. I'm able, because I'm refreshed and my cup is full, and so now I'm better able to pour out into my environment. And so for you, what is it that will work for you? What does that self-care piece look like? And like I said, start out small, and that way you build consistency and you have the commitment. And I promise you, as you start doing it on a consistent basis, you will get addicted to it and it will become a non-negotiable and part of your life. Put those individuals around you that you know are going to hold you accountable for that self-care piece. Tell them, this is my self-care plan. Draw yourself out a self-care plan and say, this is it. Share it with them and ask them to hold you accountable. I promise you my kids do that for me. If it's 7 o'clock and I'm not doing it, they're like, "Mom, what are you doing? Isn't it that time?" So really think about that. I know that it's a challenge and it's hard and we are juggling so much, but if you're not doing self-care, take a moment to sit back and really truly ask yourself, how are you doing? How are you doing right now? How are you feeling? Are you feeling burnt out? Are you feeling frustrated? Are you feeling like, oh my goodness, there's not enough time in the day? Are you tired? Think about how you are feeling right now if you are not doing self-care on a consistent basis. I'm going to leave you with that. Remember, I'm going to say the definition of self-care again. It is to become aware of and identify what you are feeling, and then allow yourself to lean into that feeling in a way that honors yourself and your emotions. So how are you going to honor yourself on a consistent basis? I would love for you all to share with me, how is it that you're honoring yourself? So if you'd like to, please hit us up on the Instagram and let us know. Harli Inside the Bubble with Harli G. This is how I honor myself and commit to doing my self-care. Okay, if you'd like to have some ideas, let us know too. We'll definitely love to help you with that. Okay, so that is all that we have for today for our episode on self-care. And I will say that I am, as we are approaching our 1 year anniversary, we are planning on what that is going to look like. And I can't wait. And I'm so honored that you insiders have stuck in there with me through this journey. And I promise you that I am absolutely honored and just grateful that you guys have been able to hang in there with me. So thank you, thank you, thank you so much. We drop episodes every Monday. Now we are getting ready to switch things up a little bit, but we'll definitely let you guys know once that happens and what that's going to look like. And if you like this episode, if something from this episode really touched you, moved you, resonated with you, drop us a review on the platform, whether it's Apple, Spotify, iHeart, wherever you're listening to this episode. Please drop us a review. We would love, love, love to hear from you. And of course, if you are already into self-care, kudos to you, and continue to do what you need to do. Remember, it's a journey. And if you're not and you want to have some ideas, we would love to help you out with that. Okay, let's keep each other accountable to make sure that we are staying centered and healthy. Okay, and you know what I always say, there's purpose in your story.
I hope you enjoyed our show today. Hit the subscribe button and share. Share this pod with your family, with your friends, with your girlfriends, and follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Inside the Bubble with HG. Keep the conversation going. Drop us a heart emoji. Engage with us. We would love to hear from you. New episodes are dropping every Monday on your podcast streaming platforms. And remember, there's purpose in your story.